Thomas Sorber is in my first round thanks to his feel, length, and two-way production. This is Floor and Ceiling. Let's break him down. Thomas Sorber will be around the mid-20s of my next big board. The Georgetown freshman can score, pass, and rebound on the inside while being a fairly high-level athlete who can use his physical tools very effectively on defense. Looking ahead, Sorber will have to prove that he's not caught between the 4 and the 5, and he'll need to convert from playing first and foremost with his back to the basket into even more of a play finisher. A left foot injury shut down Sorber's freshman campaign, but he should be back playing around early August. Right now, most of Sorber's work comes in the post. He's strong and assertive down low, able to act quickly, using only a single dribble after carving out space with his body. If Sorber starts on the block, he'll usually go baseline, sometimes spinning off his man. Sorber made 68% of his shots at the rim this season, which is excellent given how much he played in the half court. Sorber is not overly tall for a center at around 6'10", but the 19-year-old understands how to leverage his incredible 7'6" wingspan, while also using his body and the glass to finish and create advantages. That length, in particular, is worth emphasizing because Ryan Kalkbrenner and Kaman Malwach were the only combine prospects with rangier arms. Then, Sorber has soft touch on his extension finishes, which helps him out in stickier situations. At this juncture though, I will say Sorber's scoring is probably too reliant on getting touches with his back to the basket. A lot of NBA bigs nowadays, particularly rotation ones, need to be play finishers before anything else. That largely means playing out of cuts and rolls rather than the post. Sorber will need to make that translation once he gets drafted, although part of it is situational. His future NBA team surely won't encourage as many post-ups as Georgetown did. Sorber dealt with a lot of defensive attention in college, posting a 24.2 usage rate, but I think his future in the league is playing more of a role. Ultimately, Sorber is a smaller center, so he'll struggle against length, contact, and traffic overall sometimes. Sorber's patience can keep improving as well, since his finishes at the basket occasionally feel rushed under pressure. Sorber also faces up, where he displays his soft touch. In the NBA, these face-ups will likely be more necessary than strict post-ups. Sorber will do this at the elbows, the baselines, and the free throw line. He likes to use a hard jab step before shooting a mid-range jumper over his defender, usually without having taken any dribbles beforehand. Sorber can occasionally make these shots, and his free throw numbers are encouraging, like I'll discuss with his three-pointer. However, these jumpers feel like Sorber is settling to me, especially when the Georgetown big gets pushed away from his spots, so he's not even in rhythm or on balance. I very much prefer when Sorber is aggressive, putting the ball on the floor. Like in the post, he's decisive with quick moves and smart at utilizing his body, length, and the glass to convert. I'm reiterating this because Sorber is functionally using all of these tools from different spots. These flashes are very exciting, and the ones that intrigue me the most are when Sorber uses an inverted pick and roll. This didn't happen that often at Georgetown, but it happened enough times to get my attention. Sorber would get a snug screen around the high post, and then keep his handle tight against the set defense to score under control. Focus on how Sorber finishes most plays, and you'll notice that his process is quite similar. The Georgetown prospect is also usable in handoffs and dribble handoffs. Sorber can keep the ball and attack the rim, but he'll also simplify his role and act as more of a play finisher. Like I said before, that will probably be needed. This season, Sorber made 68% of his total shots at the rim, which ticked up slightly in the half court. Georgetown didn't play fast or in transition, so Sorber proved that he can produce against a set defense, and I think that his tools are projectable in the open court as well. Already, he's a relatively straightforward fit in the pick and roll, and perhaps even more appealingly, he can execute these handoffs and DHOs while creating space for himself and the ball handler around the mid-range or the three-point line. Sorber has safe hands, and he times his dives to the basket pretty well. The questions surrounding Sorber's play finishing are similar to all of his questions scoring in the paint. Basically, he'll have to produce in an NBA context against defenders who are bigger, longer, smarter, and more skilled. Keep in mind that this is not only the big, but also the help. Still, Sorber will almost surely have less attention on him, so the hope is that this can help improve his numbers. This season, the Georgetown forward converted 1/2 of his 36 shots on rolls, and he had 22 dunks in 24 games, which in my opinion is not enough. Sure, that tracking is not perfect, but my point is that the efficiency has to improve. Plus, as Sorber plays less out of the post, I expect that his volume on rolls is going to rise, which will be a test. In college, he was able to bully smaller defenders down low fairly often. This will still happen in the NBA sometimes, but less often. I do expect Sorber to continue playing with contact and getting early steals though, which can be a good way to pick up easy transition points. However, if Sorber cannot be a true 5 in the NBA due to a combination of factors, one which might be not finishing plays at a high enough clip, then Sorber's entire fit on offense becomes way murkier. I do believe that Sorber will be a center like he was at Georgetown, but it's not a total lock. Sorber is a strong positional rebounder who finishes and extends possessions through his rebounding on both ends, pulling down 8.5 boards per game. I'll focus here on what the Georgetown freshman does on the offensive glass, where he understands how to use his motor, penchant for contact, and functional athleticism. Sorber is active and intentional about making a move to get on the inside of his defender and win early position on the glass. He makes multiple efforts, gets dirty, and cleans up around the rack. My only slight nitpick is that Sorber can rush his putbacks, which might happen even more in the NBA given the league's tighter windows and increased athleticism. I'll be keeping an eye on that, but overall, I like Sorber's rebounding a lot, and he reminds me of Day'Ron Sharpe. This extends to Sorber's passing, where he constantly shows good feel by executing quick reads. At Georgetown, the 19-year-old posted 2.4 assists per game. As I've been saying, Sorber can play out of handoffs, which is a safe floor to keep the ball moving. He'll open up the three-point line and get screen assists on drives as well. More than that though, Sorber showed that he can execute a variety of reads coming out of the post. Those are intriguing, but they'll likely need to be tempered down and translated to other spots around the floor once he's in the NBA. That will mean touches around the elbows or above the break, but Sorber has flashed enough there as well. The Georgetown big is shrewd about finding his team's cutters and corner shooters. In college, Sorber invited double teams and then made skip passes or kickouts, but he'll see far fewer attention going forward. However, I'm focused on his holistic ability to scan the floor rapidly and make the correct read with accuracy pretty often. Sorber proved that he could do that in his 24 games this season. Looking to the future, I'd most like to see whether the Hoyas prospect can make similar reads out of the short roll. I think he will though, because broadly, I believe that Sorber is a decent connective playmaker who keeps things moving and creates advantages by leveraging how he scores into passes. The 19-year-old will have to keep cutting down on his turnovers, although those don't exist to a worrying extent. This season, Sorber had 58 assists to 54 turnovers, giving him a 1.1 assist to turnover ratio. In truth, Sorber's turnovers might be partially linked to his role in college. Georgetown needed a lot from their freshmen, and Sorber's ideal NBA fit is more supportive than starring, in my opinion. In that capacity, he'll still need to be careful with his handoffs or elbow touches. Sorber's accuracy can stand to be cleaner at times, and generally he reacts quickly and makes the correct reads, but his deliveries can get deflected and use the extra polish. Sorber cannot make threes right now, but he shoots them, and there are reasons to believe that he can expand his range. First, we saw near the top of the video how the Georgetown big likes to face up and shoot those no-dribble jumpers. Then, Sorber makes his free throws at a decent clip for a big, having converted 72% of his 105 foul shots this year. Plus, as I said, Sorber is a willing three-point shooter, so I feel like it's mostly a matter of limited range rather than poor mechanics. Still, a considerable leap will be needed, and Sorber's shooting, and especially floor spacing, is sort of theoretical for NBA purposes. This year, he went 6 for 67 from deep. Diving into the numbers, Sorber only made 1 of his 20 catch-and-shoot threes that were categorized as being guarded, so evidently, by all intents and purposes, he's a very long ways away from making trays in the NBA. Thomas Sorber was a defensive powerhouse during his 24 games at Georgetown. He averaged 3.5 stocks per game, which can be divvied up into 2 blocks and 1.5 steals. Taking a closer look at the numbers, that's 84 stocks in 24 games, which is evidently awesome, and then the more advanced stats tell the story as well. Sorber had a 7.6 block rate, which is just dominant, and his 2.7 steal rate is also very good for a big. Sorber's output on this end of the floor at Georgetown was close to flawless, although it was mostly against a low level of competition. In the NBA, his biggest questions will be his pick-and-roll versatility, his quickness, and his size. With the first, it will be about whether the Hoyas prospect can handle a higher volume of possessions as the big defending the pick-and-roll. In the second area, I don't find Sorber's foot speed to be particularly problematic, but he's a big, heavy body, having weighed in at a combine-leading 263 pounds. Sorber moved around fine for the most part in college, but he'll have to cover larger spaces in quicker fashion at the next level. At Georgetown, closeouts could be a problem from time to time, and going forward, Sorber will be tested in space and on switches. He was relatively okay at Georgetown, but the difficulty of those tests will increase in the NBA. Then, with the size, Sorber is very long, but he's not that tall, so some of the questions that pop up with prospects like Colin Murray-Boyles or Asa Newell at the 5 are also relevant. If we want to go back to my Daron Sharp comparison, that applies as well, or even someone like Thomas Bryant. Focusing on this season, however, Sorber was pretty outstanding. I liked him the most helping on drives and ball screens. Sorber timed himself well, and he has the capacity and the motor to successfully make multiple jumps and efforts. Definitely, Sorber gets the most out of his insane length. Remember, he has a near +9 wingspan, so the Georgetown freshman can use that to offset any concerns about his height or to recover and get back into plays. That's not usually needed though, since Sorber plays with good discipline. That's evidenced by his 3.5 stocks per game compared to his 2.2 fouls a night. Sorber is not jumpy or rash, and even when he might give up the speed advantage, I think that his positioning is smart and he's clever about understanding his limitations. This was the case on switches at Georgetown, but again, this wasn't a very demanding setting for Sorber in about half of his games. Let's wrap up by talking a bit more about the pick and roll, which is essential for every NBA big, and I'm choosing to view Sorber almost exclusively as a 5 or as a big who can play next to another center. When Sorber is involved in ball screens, he's a decently fluid backwards mover, although probably reliant on some backline help. Sorber is a very solid drop defender who operates with precise timing, as well as good hand placement on his rejections and contests. Like we've been seeing, Sorber's length is pretty crazy, so it impacts all of his defensive moments in a positive way. He can break up lobs, get deflections, etc. Even when Sorber faced up against someone like Ryan Kalkbrenner, he gave up a few inches in terms of height, but they were much closer with their arms outstretched. The story is similar in the post, although I think Sorber is even safer here as a 5. He won't face many post-ups in the NBA, even from bigger centers, and I'm not sure that he can be taken advantage of down low thanks to his thick, bruising frame. If Sorber stays at his current weight, only 7 NBA players would be listed as heavier. Overall, I trust that Sorber can be a defensive stud with a pretty safe role down the other end based on his feel and production, but he'll have to move his play finishing away from the post, probably expand his range, and likely become lighter on his feet.